So parents always tend to think that it's good to be harsh and hard on your kids, and they think that it raises strong men and strong children. They think that it's good to just be strict with them, and they think that it's the right choice to do, to not give their children any permission and any right to act. Maybe it's because they were raised the same way by their own parents, and now they are reflecting the same attitude and behavior onto their children. Or maybe they think it's right to be strict on their children and that it's essential for their growth in the future. What they don't realize is the side effects that a harsh and strict parenting can have on their children. And they don't know what it can lead to and how it's crucial to children's personality and development. So when I'm mentioning the word strict parents, you immediately had a thought in your head. There's maybe a chance you had a vision of it. Maybe it's your own parents, maybe it's your friend, or maybe it's your neighbors, or you remembered your friend attitude. But you don't know the psychological effect of it and how it can ruin your life and the social effects it has on kids. And the side effects of harsh parenting are just worse than you thought, because it traces the worst types of people in the future. You can instantly notice an individual who has strict parents, and it's easy to determine if a child has been raised right or he's just been treated wrong his entire childhood. You just have to look at their attitude and their behavior and see how they deal with people, especially how they deal with people in bad situations. You always hear that strict parents raises good liars. They raise sneaky and envious toxic children, and eventually they raise them to become evil and anxious. But what is the explanation behind this process? So in our early years as children, all of us were dependent on our parents. We depended on them for food, for clothes, for shelter, for whatever. But as children, we like to feel that we have a sense of freedom and we have the right to act on our own. And then when a child or a son or a daughter tries to act and do something by himself, he immediately gets controlled and punished. And then they take away all his freedom and all his permission that he once had. And what that does, when you forbid your children to act and you give him no permission to act, this child, when he grows older, he's gonna feel the need to control everything in his life, to have everything under his control, whether it's in business, in his career, or even in his relationship. And if you imagine the control of toxic types that we see in the different kinds of relationships, the reason controllive and toxic people rises is because of their parenting and their childhood when they were young. And the fascinating thing is these kind of people are so common nowadays. These types of people refuses to act on anyone's decision, and they like to make their own decisions. They like to act by their own, and they like to make every single decision by themselves. We can often see these types of people with abusive husbands and controlling husbands who just doesn't give his wife any permission because that's the way he was treated when he was young by his parents. And we can notice that he has a deep desire to just control everything in his life and to have control over anything that comes his way. This type of guy will often have a controlling behavior and a sense of dominance over his partner or his spouse. And we can see it also with the toxic and bad leaders who are elected and they refuse cooperation. Or we can see it with a lot of CEOs and businessmen who just refuses to give their employees any freedom to act, and they just like to take place in every single work, even if it doesn't involve them. And also they might refuse to leave their workplace. They give responsibility to his employees because he wants to have everything under his own control. What I personally notice is the biggest side effects it has on personality. This type of parenting always raises good liars, and 80% of the time, people who are good at lying and escaping out of bad situations, and people who are just good at lying their way out of dangerous situations, are often the result of a specific and strict parenting. It's because as kids, when we did something wrong, we're always told by our own parents to always tell the truth and to always be honest, to reply with honesty, even if we know we did something bad. But surprisingly, when we answered and spoke the truth, and we admitted to the things we did even if it was wrong, we somehow got punished for it. So it seemed like we were doing the right thing by speaking the truth, but somehow we were getting punished for it, and it was just not helping us anymore. So what this parenting does to a child is when a kid does something bad that he knows he will get punished for, he will instantly start to find ways to lie his way out. He will just avoid his parents finding out by hiding stuff and keeping stuff away from them. He escapes his way by lying, and he finds out that lying works for him more than honesty. So what that does is children starts to lie from a young age, and eventually, when they grow older, they will become naturally good liars in their social life. And you can instantly spot a good liar by the way he escapes his way out of tense situations and his way of handling people when he gets caught in bad situations, because he will lie his way out just like he did in his childhood. Because this strict parenting taught us how to become genius liars, and it taught us how to come up with genius excuses to avoid the same punishment that we experienced in our early childhood. And we can often see this type of behavior and attitude with spoiled and wasted children. Talking about the strict parents who just raise sluts and they raise wasted children, is every single possible bad habit on earth. Because when we were children, we were always forbidden forbidden to have freedom and to try the things we wanted, and we weren't allowed to do the certain things that we liked, because we would always get disciplined for it every single time. Whenever we did something, our parents will instantly command us and control us to fix our attitude, and what that did is develop a tendency to fall in love with doing forbidden things. For example, if we were told not to smoke and our childhood were just filled with our parents telling us to just avoid smoking, they keep on telling us the dangers of smoking, and they kept on saying it harshly to avoid smoking and doing drugs. And we eventually started smoking and doing drugs because we wanted to try the things that were forbidden to us when we were young, because we weren't allowed to choose to avoid them by ourselves. For example, if somehow right now I had kids, I wouldn't just tell them to not to smoke. Of course, I will guide them and I will tell them the dangers of smoking, but I think I would give them the freedom to try a cigarette, and I'll hope that they will make the decision by themselves to avoid smoking, and I will make it clear that this will ruin their health and it will stop them from achieving their future ambitions, and I just didn't force it onto their throats. Now, this specific parenting is often used because our parents were also treated the same way by their own parents. So what they are doing is just reflecting the same attitude that were once used on them. Or it is because our parents in the last century, they started to have children in their mid-30s instead of their 20s. And what that did to us is that our parents became older than us, and they became so different than us, to the point where they can't understand us anymore, because they are too far ahead in life. They forgot what it feels like to actually be young, and they forgot what it feels like to not have any freedom and control over your life. Because if parents started having children in their 20s, they will instantly understand the importance of giving their children the freedom to act, and they will instantly understand the importance of giving their children a set of permissions to a limit, of course. And that's why I say, and I know this is off topic, and that's why I say like I want to have children in my own 20s, maybe 7 or 8 years from now. And I know that seems like a whole journey, it seems like far ahead, but it's good to think long term. And the reason why I want to have kids in my mid-20s, I don't want my kids to grow up differently than I am, to the point where I don't understand their generation anymore. And also, I don't think that it's good to have a 30 or 35 year gap between you and your own children, because if you decide to get kids when you're 35 or 40, then if you think of it, you will become an old man and while they are still teenagers. And that's an off-topic thing to say. I think it's not a good choice for those who say to go live your life and travel and have fun in your 20s, and then think about having kids, because if you go and have fun your entire life, then first, your health won't be the same, and your mindset will change, and your way of thinking won't be the same as in your 20s. And secondly, if you're a man, then it is your duty and it is your purpose to pass on your bloodline, and it is your task to leave something behind in this earth after you pass away, of course. Instead, what I think is the best thing to do is to consider having kids when you're young, so you can start working on yourself. But if you keep in mind that you want to have children, and you consider having children in 5, 10 or 15 years, or eventually when the time comes, you will just feel guilty to sit around all day and just be lazy all the time, so you can eventually become the right parent for your children. Alright, that's enough topic, and back to the main point. The lighting may seem a bit different, this is a completely different day, and the battery died out of nowhere. And I was still recording like an idiot, I had no idea that the battery died, so I'm repeating the last part. This is like 3 or 4 days later. The thing I imagine most is children going astray and adults going lost in life. Because if our parents were so strict on us as children, we waited for their decision to act and waited for their permission to have some freedom, and we were so dependent on them for all the period of our childhood. And what that did is they didn't teach us how to become leaders and how to act on our own and to be dependent on ourselves, because we were guided by them and by their decision for most of our lives. So what that does is when we become adults, eventually we won't have an idea of how to handle opportunities, and we won't know how to deal with stressful situations and pressure, and we will eventually work for someone else, and we will just be led and guided by someone else who gives us orders just like our parents did in our early childhood. And that's a very important thing to understand, because when parents are harsh and strict on us, they don't teach you the art of managing yourself, and they don't teach you the art of taking decisions. They didn't teach you how you can be the type of guy that people can look up to. So instead, you became the guy just reliant and dependent on others. And it's just truly fascinating of how much our early years and childhood can affect all of our lives and the future. And it's surprising of how deep of an impact the parenting of our parents can have on us, because our whole personality and way of thinking is just related to our early years. And yeah, it's a good thing to analyze yourself, and it's good to remember the past and see how you were raised and the way your parents treated you, so you can understand yourself and your personality as of right now. And you remember the way you were raised as a child, your life and your decision and your opinion on the world will all make sense, and you realize that your parents are the ones responsible for the way that you think as of right now. And yeah, that's gonna be pretty much it. I hope if you understand something out of this video, is that how much our childhood and the way we were raised can affect our whole personality, and how dangerous it is for our parents to be strict on their children in their early life. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Remember, brothers, always take action. Peace.